and runs a venture capital firm and an old friend as well, just a great guy. And he has a history here with this community as well, and I'll let him tell you more about that. Um, Tanner Wilson is president of our entrepreneurship club.
Hey, Tanner. Nice to meet you, too.
And we have distinguished faculty and students as well. So I won't take up a lot of time. I'll hand it over to
Perfect. That sounds great. And if I don't have to use that, that's great. So thanks for having me. I think we have about a half an hour or 45 minutes together, so I'll try and use that effectively. So it's great to be back in LeGrand. First of all, before I start, my experience is, unless I talk about some of the things that are on your mind this morning, we're not gonna really engage. So the things you're probably thinking about is, so I'm 7 feet tall, about 270 pounds, size 18 shoe, 6 pounds 13 ounces when I was born, and the weather is okay up here. It's remarkably similar to what you're experiencing right now. So now that we're done with that, it's great to be back in LeGrand. I got here last night. I lived here from 88 to 92. I came out to run a couple of nursing facilities here, and I drove around. I think they're still here. I'll talk about a little bit more about that. But LeGrand was a combination. It was not only it was a wonderful experience, and being here, I'm reminded about all those great experiences. It was also filled with challenges and some real life learning lessons. I worked for Grand Run Hospital for about a year, and Jim Mattis, I think he's still the CEO up at the hospital, a great leader, hired me, and then a year later fired me. And I was the director of development, and he was right. I deserved it. I hadn't learned by the time I was in my 20s, even late 20s, that life was all about relationships. And so that was one of my first real big failures in life and learning opportunities. And then after that, I wanted to, growing up, I had cancer when I was 15, and I had a brain tumor when I was like 18 or 19. I missed my freshman year in college, and that piqued my interest in healthcare. And so when it didn't work out with Jim, I thought, well, maybe I should be a doctor. And so I enrolled here at Eastern Oregon and spent about a year here getting all my pre-med requirements out of the way, and I failed miserably at that. Jenny Swanger, who was a terrific teacher in biology and also the pre-med advisor, when I was done here, he looked at me and he says, "Rick, I just don't think you should be a doctor." And I didn't understand it at the time. Years later, I figured out he was right about that. And that was another learning lesson and failure, and I deserved it. I hadn't figured out at that time either that life was really about serving others, and it wasn't just about yourself. And I was all about myself at the time, and he had me figured out, and he got it right. And I understand he's since passed away, and I appreciate that lesson that he gave me. So Wilson has asked me to come out and tell you a few stories about life and business, and so I'm going to do just that. I'm going to try and keep it around Avamere Health Services, a company that started about 23 years ago or so, and then venture capital. And I'll tell you about some life lessons and some things that I've learned along the way. So, like I said, my life would be defined by multiple attempts to do things and failures along the way, and maybe a handful or less of successes. But it's not been easy, and probably deservedly so. I learned early, whether it was through with my health or being fired or some of those things I've already talked about, that life is just not fair. It's not easy, and I'm not sure it was ever designed to be easy. I think that challenges and failures are really important experiences that we all need to have in life. There's nothing more evolutionary than failure and picking yourself up and learning from that. But as an entrepreneur, and I'm assuming several of you are coming to school here because you're interested in business and maybe starting your own business. Well, my experience is if you want to do that, that's great and you should. But as an entrepreneur, you've got to anticipate challenges all the time. You've got to embrace them, and you've got to find a way to thrive in a challenging environment because it's coming your way in business. So how I got involved in healthcare was after college. This was back in the 80s, and I needed a job, and I wanted to work in hospital administration. This is before I came out to LeGrand. And I couldn't find a job in hospital administration. And I applied for like 40 or 50 jobs back then. The economy was not good. And the only call I got back was for a bookkeeper's position in an old nursing home. And at that time, I never thought that I'd be in a nursing facility. I remember going in for the interview, and they said, what are your salary requirements? And I said, well, to pay for education, because I graduated from the University of Oregon and was going to Portland State at night to get my MBA. I said, so to pay for my school, pay for my rent, and pay for my beer, I need $1,100 a month. They called me back, offered the job at $1,300 a month, and I thought, God bless America and the free market economy. I love this, and I was on my way. I had $200 extra a month when I was, 22 years old. And that's how I got started. And like I said, I never thought I'd be in a nursing facility. Life just kind of throws things your way. You think you're going one way, and you end up going another. And but what I found was that healthcare, post-acute healthcare, I really enjoyed the people that I worked with, my colleagues, and I loved serving the patients, the customers that were in those facilities. I didn't think we were doing a great job. We were owned by a large national firm, but it was a place where I felt like I could make an impact on people's lives, and it stuck. And so I feel lucky to have had that experience. So fast forward about 7 or 8 years, I had spent in various positions running nursing facilities, came out here, was an administrator for a couple of regional firms in Oregon. And then in 1995, had the opportunity to go into business for myself. And it was kind of the luck of the draw. I was in a meeting, and I ran into a person, an accountant, who represented a gentleman who had a skilled nursing facility in Hillsboro, Oregon. It was failing in every sense of the way, financially, regulatorily, brand-wise. And he said, hey, would you like to go in business? Because I represent an owner of a facility that's failing, and if you want an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, come check it out. So I did, spent a little bit of time, I was excited, and I went all in. So sold my house, sold my car. At that time, my entire net worth was about $23,000, and moved in with my mom, who lived in the Hillsboro area, slept on her couch, and there was no 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was going to win or lose, and that was it. And I was told that when I started, I had a good friend that was in the business, and I asked him if he would help me out financially to get started. He said, no, but I'll be there for you emotionally. And he says, what it's going to take, you're going to learn as an entrepreneur, is almost a miracle a day to get into business and to stay in business. And he was right. I'll tell you the challenges that we faced that first year. First of all, we were undercapitalized, as most entrepreneurs are. We had $23,000. The owner of the facility gave me a line of credit for about $50,000. But this facility had been losing $50,000 to $60,000 a month for the prior year that I took over, and it was just in dreadful shape. Within the first couple of months, this is the winter of 1995, part of the roof of the facility blew off. That should have shut us down, but the fire department came out and helped construct a temporary patch for that big part of the roof, and we were able to move some of the folks out of that facility. This is a 104-bed facility with a census of about 50 because nobody wanted to live there. So the next day, I got a hold of the insurance agent, and he was from Idaho. He drove over, felt sorry for me, wrote a check for the repairs to be done. But because I was undercapitalized, I used that check to make the end of the month's payroll. And boy, I don't know if I'd do that again, but that was our start. And then about a month later, it got really cold. Part of the sprinkler system broke, And it took a while to figure out what was going on. As we were evacuating patients, the ceilings were literally caving in under the weight of the water. We finally got that stopped, closed down to wing, and called the insurance agent, and he wrote me a bigger check to pay for all those repairs, and I used that money to make payroll for the following month. Then the final thing happened about 2 months after that. We were about 4 months into this, and we went through a survey. This facility had regulatory issues. Surveyors came in and found some issues that we were unaware of, and because of the poor performance over the last couple of years of the facility, they took our license away. So there I was, all in, owned nothing, living with my mom, and essentially was out of business. Had somehow, during all that, managed to surround some folks joined the team that were really great. Made a pitch to the regulators in Salem, and they gave us another shot. And they said, as long as you don't admit anybody, by the way, we're going to tell the community that you're doing a poor job and you're probably going to be shut down. But if you can survive that, we'll be back in 90 days to survey you. We got through that. The federal government didn't believe that we could have done the work that we did, so they came in a week later and gave us through a federal survey and agreed that we were worthy of being in business, so we were off to the races. There's a lot of other stories that I could tell you about that business over the last 20 some odd years, but suffice it to say that for a lot of different reasons, today Avamere is a diversified group of businesses with two divisions, if you will. One is the business to consumer business, continuum of care, so that's home health, private duty home care. We build and operate retirement communities, assisted living communities, memory care facilities, campuses, short stay skilled nursing facilities, and then hospice for end-of-life care at home. And then the second division of the company we call the ancillary services division, and that's the business to business division. And that's where we have companies that sell to hospitals and long-term care facilities and that kind of stuff. So pharmaceuticals and contract rehab therapy and medical supplies. We operate in about 15 states. We're approaching, I think we've got 11 or 12,000 employees now and about $1 billion of revenue. So that's Avamere today. I'll wrap up the healthcare business with when Wilson said, hey, come tell some stories about your businesses. And so there were two aha moments that I had that I could recall right away about Avamere. And the first was, I remember a few years after we got started, and I would move into these facilities and spend a month to 2 months living in them and getting to know the customer experience and the employee experience. And so I knew them well. I was driving down to Newport, where we had a facility, and it struck me, it was a beautiful summer morning, and it just came to me that our customers didn't want to be in our buildings. They were nice buildings, we were doing a good job, but they were still nursing homes. And seniors didn't want to spend their final years or months or days in a nursing home. And there was nothing we could do to change that, and I had to admit to myself, I didn't want to have my end of my life in my own facilities. And so therein began a change in purpose, where we went from being a nursing home business and did a 180, and our purpose, our core purpose, and the values to support that purpose became clear. And that was to align our products and services with the needs and expectations of those that we serve, the senior population. And the mission was to keep seniors healthy and independent and out of our nursing homes. The better we align, so that took us into home care and home health care and all these community-based care services. So we didn't get out of the nursing facility business, but for the most part, we've grown in home and community-based care and have been rewarded for that. And the nursing facilities that we have are primarily short stay. We used to measure length of stay in years, then months, and now they average just about 20 days. So they're going in from the hospital for cardiac rehab, orthopedic rehab, those kind of things. So it was kind of a radical departure from our old business model. And there's something to be said. I remember if you've read any books from Jim Collins, Good to Great, Built to Last, those kind of things, one thing I always picked up was if you build a business around a product or a certain product or a service versus building it around a core purpose of why you're in business with supporting values, all products and services become obsolete. So in many ways, we had recognized that the old nursing home model was becoming obsolete. We had to make a shift, and we seemed to do that at the right time. The second thing that I remember was, and again, I'll finish this up on the healthcare side. About 10 years ago, I spent a lot of time back in Washington, D.C. as the chair of the American Healthcare Association. And so I hired an outside couple of folks to come in and be the CEO and COO of our company. And 2 or 3 years later, I came back, and I didn't like the situation, the position that we were in. And so I moved back. I spent a year then living in our facilities, independent assisted and the skilled nursing facilities, and learned a lot. It was an interesting time, an evolutionary time. We were doing a lot of things, a lot of little things wrong. But those little things were adding up to a big difference in the customer experience. I could go on forever. By the way, unless I had directly experienced our products, I wouldn't have understood the problems that we had and the customer experience. And so I remember the first shower that I took, and it was a great new independent retirement campus, and it was like a dribble, right? I turned on that shower, and I wanted a hard, hot shower, and I wasn't satisfied. So I went around that day at breakfast asking some of my the other residents there, tell me about your showers. And they said, oh, we hate the showers here. So I went to the administration of the building and I said, what's going on with the showers? And the response that I got back from him was, yeah, we've heard about that issue, but the fact is that the water pressure in our campus meets the minimum city guidelines. Well, I said, I don't care about minimum city guidelines. I want to know that our customers are satisfied. And there were a lot of other little things, like I said, that added up. He was totally out of touch, and within the first couple of weeks, got fired. A few months later, I moved into an assisted living community, and I had similar experiences. And within a couple of weeks, the leadership in that facility, that community, had to be fired. And so at that point in time, I was about 6 months into my experience, and it was really clear about why we weren't succeeding. We were failing. We were failing the customer. We were failing our employees. So I went back to the office and sat down with the executive team, and I said, look, here are the experiences I'm having. And if I have to live in every one of our facilities and tell you that you're doing a bad job, you're all going to be fired next. Things got better really quick. So the reason why I shared that experience with you is that whatever business you get into, it's really important that do whatever it takes to understand the experience that your employees and customers are having with your products and services from their perspective. It was really evolutionary for us. We failed, talking about failure. We tried to get into the senior gym business and absolutely failed. We lost millions in it. We had the wrong business model. We didn't quite know what we were doing. We didn't understand the revenue model. We hired the wrong people to run the senior gyms, and within a couple of years, I had to shut them down because we we failed. We made this assumption that you made money based on membership, and in gyms where they really make most of their money is on the ancillary services, things that they sell in addition to membership. I could go on, but I'll tell you, I'm glad that we tried that. I'm not glad we lost a lot of money. But it was a learning experience. And then one last thing that I'll tell you about with healthcare, probably one of our most tragic mistakes and loss and failures. We had a facility up in the Seattle-Tacoma area, and in there we had one of the state's largest ventilator programs. We had on average 40 to 50 ventilator folks, so they lived there full time. They were on these breathing machines. And up in the state of Washington, if you take care of ventilator patients, you have to do it through a contractor that provides all the ventilator equipment and the respiratory therapists. And in a matter of 6 months in that facility, we had 3 patients die. 2 because of equipment failure, machine failure, and 1 at the hands of a therapist who was intubating a patient, did it wrong, and killed the patient, suffocated the patient. Each time one of these deaths happened, we had a choice, and we always made the wrong choice. What we should have done, what we did was, when these things happened, we had regulators come in, fine us, give us a bad survey and all this, and we always pushed way back and said, we have to use the company that you're telling us we have to use to provide the respiratory therapists and ventilators. They're failing, not us. Well, they didn't see it that way, and after the 3rd death, they shut us down. We lost millions. We could have avoided that if we had operated on a different level of values. If we would have done what was right for our patients, for our customers, the first time that we had a bad outcome, whether it was our direct fault or not, we should have stopped admissions. We should have figured out what was really going on. And if we then continued to not have faith in the company that we were contracting with, instead of putting our patients at risk, we should have just closed down the entire ventilator program. So if you're going to start a business, make sure you got your core purpose right, and make darn sure for yourself and for your business you understand the core values of how you're going to operate that business. And those core values are important about how you treat people, how you hire people, the culture of your company. We didn't have that right, and unfortunately, it cost 3 lives and a huge issue for our company. So, the lessons there, hey, take risks. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is I hope you do fail. You're not pushing hard enough if you're not failing. And I'll tell you, the sting of failure is the most evolutionary thing you'll ever go through. One of the great things about America is the ability to make your own choice. You make a wrong choice, you fail, and you learn to pick yourself up. You learn not to make those same mistakes again. It forces us to learn and grow. And as an entrepreneur, you got to be ready to fail. You got to look forward to failure, because you're probably not going to be successful, really successful, until you've had a few failures. That's how I see it. Failure is how we learn as individuals and as companies and communities and as a nation. I don't know anyone who's been successful, and I don't care how you define success, whether it's in athletics, whether it's as a parent or in your marriage or in business or in education. If you're going to be great at whatever you choose to do and however you define success, you've got to fail along the way. Or I don't think you'll ever achieve greatness without failure. That's how I see it. That's my life. That doesn't mean that it has to be your life. But this thing called failure, I think, is underestimated and overfeared. When I'm hiring somebody, it really piques my interest when I sit down with someone and they can transparently talk to me about their failures in life and their failures in business and what they've learned. I'd rather hire somebody and surround myself with a team who's failed and learned from those failures, and they're ready to apply those learning experiences for our company. Invest in yourself. It's the best investment you'll ever make. Some other things, again, you're talking to a guy here who's made a lot of, it's been a world of hard knocks. Word about caution about success. And, inevitably, some of you, maybe all of you, are going to become super successful in business. It's easy to become prideful. And remember, if you base success on money, money's really easy to lose, and it shouldn't be your guiding principle in terms of business. My experience with success is a lot of times it takes a lot of luck to be successful. Divine intervention. Just being at the right place at the right time. And it often means that you just don't give up when others do. It means being the last one standing, winning just by not quitting. I also find that success is usually more about the work of others that you surround yourself with than your own work. And what this all adds up to is, I'm not really impressed with those that think that their success is all about them, all about their work, and are really good at patting themselves on their back. The real measure of success in business, from what I have seen and what I know today, is the quality of people that you surround yourself with and the culture that you establish. Okay, so that's the healthcare side. About 10 years ago, well, I started making investments. We doing okay?
Yeah.
All right. And so I was in part of a business group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. If you get into business, I hope you give it a chance. It's a wonderful organization. You get to know other people really intimately. And there were 3 of us that got to know each other really well. And for various reasons, we had made investments and they weren't doing well. But we were all interested in venture capital. We were all interested in helping others start and grow businesses. So in 2010, we came together and formed a partnership, Rogue Venture Partners. And I would describe it as a disruptive, early-stage investment vehicle. Our focus has been investing in Oregon. Oregon has not been the easiest place to start and grow businesses, but that's where we focused. 3 partners. Essentially, Rogue is entrepreneurs investing in entrepreneurs. We see about 300 investment opportunities a year, primarily out of the Portland metropolitan area, all that's growing. The team at Rogue goes through a very rigorous due diligence process, hearing the initial pitches with entrepreneurs, hearing about their ideas. And out of those 300, about 10 a year reach the general partners, the 3 of us, and we'll make, on average, 4 to 6 investments a year. We are able to make fairly quick decisions, and we make them unanimously. So we all come to the company with different backgrounds, real estate, finance, healthcare, that kind of stuff. And so if one votes no, if you've ever seen Shark Tank or whatever it's called, that's kind of like what it is. We give folks 30 minutes to come in, talk about their business, and that includes questions and answers, which means if you can't describe your business in less than 15 minutes, you're probably not going to do well. It's too complex, or you don't understand it well enough, or we're not going to understand it. And if one votes no, then we all vote no, we pass on the investment. We work with 70 or so co-investors around the country. And every time we take a position in a company, we reserve capital. So if you're ever, if you've started a business, or if you are going to start a business and you're looking for capital, choosing your capital partner is super important. And it's not just about the money. It's about time. Can your capital partner, for example, when it comes to capital, do they have sufficient capital to be patient capital partners with you? So at Rogue, we'll reserve 1 to 2x the original investment so that we can participate in future rounds if the company needs it, when they need it. And we also spend a lot of time mentoring and serving on the company boards, making introductions and surrounding the entrepreneurs that we make investments with resources that know about their business and can help them. So Rogue, basically over the last 8 years, we've had 3 funds. The first one was, again, 2010. It was a private fund. We funded that ourselves. It was maybe about a $15 million fund, totally Oregon-focused, early stage. By early stage, I mean post-revenue, pre-cash flow. So it was more than an idea, more than angel. You had to show that you have identified a pain point, something that a customer needs or wants, that they're willing to pay for your product or service, and that with the right amount of mentoring, capital, and introductions, infrastructure, we can see a path towards profitability, certainly higher valuation and exit. We're non-sector specific. We were investing really in people more than anything else at that time. The original investment that we made was somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000 a year. That's the initial investment we made, always a minority interest in the business. We invested in 20 companies in Fund 1. We've had 9 exits and a return of capital of 3 times. So that was relatively successful in the space. And one of those companies was a company called ID Experts, which was a identity theft prevention and restoration company. And that was a nice exit. And so we were successful over the first few years. And with that, we decided we wanted to launch an institutional fund. Still another small fund. This was, I think by the end, it was $15 million. We had some of our capital in it, but for the first time, we were taking outside capital. So for example, Oregon State University was the lead investor and put $3 million into it. We were a little more focused, a little more later stage and early stage businesses. Several of the investments were made into Fund 1 companies that were farther along the business curve, and we felt preparing for exits. Focused now on health, tech, and biotech. We invested over a couple of years, on average, $500,000 to $1 million in Fund 2 as the initial investment. We made 9 investments. We had 3 exits, including one called Sightbox, which was a startup, and it was a subscription model contact lens business. And who'd have thought? But we believed in the concept. We understood the business. And the person that was the founder really understood. He grew up, his father was an optometrist. He knew, he was able to define the company that he needed that he wanted to become, and convinced us of how that would result in a value add. And we had a really successful exit there. And within 2 years, we returned to the investors 3 times their capital investment again. So we had a bit of a track record. We're just moving into Fund 3. It's a $30 million fund. We've raised $15 to $20 million for that, again, all local. We've started deploying the capital in some very interesting companies. This time now, the average investment is $1 million to $1.5 million. And we're into some really interesting things. Down in Eugene, there's a company called Metrics, and they use worms. They use worms to accelerate the discovery of genetic mutations and to treat young children. To figure out where the mutation is and the right type of drug or combination of drug therapy to maybe not fix, but to enhance that worm's life and in essence, that baby's life. These worms are, well, I don't have enough time, but in essence, we can create a worm with a genotypic code that assimilates or matches the baby's genetic code, and then start treating those worms. Instead of treating tens or hundreds of rats, we can treat millions of worms and watch them all and see which one has the best effects with treatment. So we're excited about that right here in our own state. CrowdSmart, we've reached down to the Bay Area, and this company is a really exciting company. It's one that uses artificial intelligence and a national investor network to predict whether or not venture capital firms are going to be successful in their next round of fundraising and then exit. And over the life of that firm, they're about 8 times more likely to predict success than those that aren't. They're 8 times more than others, than the average. And so we've made an investment and taken a board position there. Anyway, there's some others. In general, that venture capital firm today is typical. We take a 2% management fee, 20% lift for all the profits. We share 20% up until the investors make 2 times their. So if someone's investing $1 million, once they get, if that group gets $2 million, then instead of making a 20% lift, we'll make 25%, and it goes up from there to 30% if the investors are getting 3 times their money. It seems to work out pretty well. So, to bring this kind of to a conclusion, and thanks for having me, some common entrepreneurial mistakes that I've made and I see in others that we're investing in. And a lot of these are avoidable, super avoidable, but for some reason or other we keep on seeming to making these. So one is being overly optimistic. We are accustomed to seeing business plans where you're starting off with nothing, and with the next 3 to 4 years, you're the next Google. It just never happens that way. We're not interested in hockey sticks to begin with. And if your business plan looks too good, you're probably not going to get much of our attention, even if you're right, because usually you're not. an overemphasis. Entrepreneurs seem to be focused on top-line revenue growth without thought about how this company is ever going to make money. So we're interested in not only your product, your service, you understand the market and the channels you're selling through, and your leadership abilities, but can you convince us that not only can you grow the company top line, but at some point in time, can someone make money in this investment? And so we're interested in cash flow at some point. You've got to be able to prove to us that you can run that company profitably. Undercapitalization, I've done it many times. I just warn you, everybody seems to do it. The avoidable problem there that I see that I wanted to share today is that as entrepreneurs, you start a business and you go out and you raise capital and you get overly concerned about dilution, taking in too much money and ending up with a lesser degree of ownership. Well, if you got a great idea, it's good to have a smaller part of a bigger pie. I'm telling you, for the most part, as an entrepreneur, take all the money you can get, as long as it's priced right. We don't have time to go through that today. But if you think you need $500,000, if you can get $1 million, take $1 million. Start off, I'd rather start with right or over capitalization than under capitalization. Waiting too long to make investments in the team, particularly finance and operations. I see entrepreneurs thinking they can do it all, and instead of hiring the right people at the right time, they wait too long and they try and get everything done themselves. They see they see spending money on people in these positions more as a cost to the company rather than an investment in the future. And a company can get away, especially a growing company, unless you've got the right finance folks with you, the right operations folks with you. You got to get that right sooner rather than later. So if you have any entrepreneurial interest and you're looking to raise money, for example, from Rogue, you've got to have more than a good idea. You've got to show that you're a good team player. By team player, that doesn't mean you're going to just roll over when challenged. But when it comes to the investors, for example, Rogue, and the folks that we want to surround yourself with, you better be a good listener, and you better be willing to figure out the value of the team instead of just going it alone. We also want to know that you can make tough decisions. And life is hard, business is hard. You're constantly going to face failure. Are you really good at operating in an intense environment where you've got to make tough decisions? Because a lot of times young entrepreneurs freeze and they don't know what to do. It's like a deer in the headlights. We're really impressed if maybe you failed at that before and have learned from that. But you got to be able to make tough decisions. Hiding bad news. We always, for some reason, folks don't like to share bad news. What really impresses me is, personally and professionally, certainly professionally with investments, is, look, I want to hear what's going on in the companies that's good. But I want to hear what's going on that's bad even faster. And if there's something that, so don't be afraid to share bad news. It's better to do that. It's, don't hide behind it. Don't, you'll go a lot further in life if you do that. And also, like I said earlier, don't give up too soon. I've seen too many people with good ideas, and they give up too quickly. And so don't do that. And the last thing I'd say about raising money is, for us, it's important that you have, I would say, unquestionable ethics and personal values. Things that are really important to me and us, integrity. I can tell you that because I lived a lot of my life without integrity. And it's better, it's much easier to live a simple life with integrity. And we insist that the people we invest with live a personal and professional life of integrity, doing the right things when people don't listen. You've learned about all those things. A work ethic. Entrepreneurs, one of the things that you've got to figure out in a generation that's looking for life balance, you won't find it being an entrepreneur. You won't be able to spend the weekends and the nights with friends who aren't entrepreneurs. I can guarantee you that. There's too much work to get done. So if you want to start a business, be willing to give up a balance in your life to get that business going and growing, because that's just what it takes. Reliability. If you tell us you're going to do something, just do it. Too many times we see people making over-promising and under-delivering. That's a real warning sign. It's pretty simple, but that's what we look for. Finally, the last thing that I'll leave you with is some other life lessons. So what I've learned, that if I were sitting here 30 years ago, that I wish I would have had people tell me and had the ability to listen, these things. By the time you're my age, you figure out you're not as smart as you thought you were. I've had to forgive. I've had to learn to forgive and be a good forgiver, because I've made so many mistakes in my life that I've had to seek forgiveness for others. And I've learned to not be judgmental. Take it or leave it. It's easier that way for me. I like to approach problems and challenges with, I'd say, curiosity rather than fear and judgment. I could tell you a lot of stories about working with unions and those kind of things where you'd think it'd be bad, and you kind of approach relationships with curiosity, and good things can happen. I've learned to listen more and talk less, although I've been talking now for 45 minutes, I'm sorry. When I am speaking, more often than not, there are three things that I ask myself. My assistant gave me this recommendation. We've been together for 15 years, and one day she says, you know what, you're talking too much. Think about these three things. Does this have to be said by me? Does this have to be said, what I'm about to say? Does it have to be said by me? And does it have to be said by me now? And when I think about that, she was right. And I tend to make fewer mistakes by talking less, listening more. I've learned in life, and hopefully you will too, earlier than I did, every battle is not worth winning. Many times in life, and certainly in business, you win by losing. A lot of times, things just aren't worth winning. And so, pick your battles wisely. And what I've found is that in life or in business, when things are going really well, expect things to go really bad. And unless you're not constantly anticipating that, you're going to be constantly surprised at how many problems come at you in life. Every time I've been had good health, I've had a health problem. And every time the business is going really well, there's a crisis right around the corner. It just happens. The question is, are you ready for it? And then, I guess, to the next generation, I would say, I wish you the best. I'm really sorry for some of the messes that our generation is leaving you. Things like a disinvestment in your education. We could go on. I hope we get back to some fundamentals that I thought were really great as a younger entrepreneur. And that is communities that value hard work, a belief in the free market economy. It's really great. It's one of the best things about America. And again, recognizing the value and the evolutionary power of failure. We tend to have moved away from some of those things in my generation, and I hope you find those again. And so, those are the stories that I thought of, and took a little more time than I thought. But do you have any questions?
No, that's great. Very inspirational. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Would you mind do we have time for a couple of questions? Okay. Just if you don't mind.
No, please. Hey, if you have any questions, I haven't bored you to death. Yes.
Can we start with student questions?
Uh-oh.
Following up, do I need that? Okay. Following up with the last statement that you said about what your generation is leaving to the rest of us.
Yeah.
Does your company now, are you willing, or have you looked into investing in the education of the younger generation? Because I know you're investing in business, but what about the education part?
That's a really good question. So I'll give you 3 answers to that. First one was we're not doing enough. But we do have, we have a good education benefit, so that if you are working for our company and want to go to school, we will pay for your education as long as, so for example, if it takes you 3 years to become a nurse, then as long as you work with us for 3 more years, that's all paid for. Does that make sense? And there are a lot of people that are pursuing that. Personally, when it comes to education, we're really engaged. I'm really involved with Portland State, sit on the board of trustees there. Anyway, we're not doing enough when it comes to that benefit.
So my other question, do you have any advice, or what would you say if someone wanted to go into business with family? There's been a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, that's simple. Don't do it. Business is too hard. Families are too important. And family businesses are, from my perspective, now that's not saying there's a lot of good family businesses out there, but the business environment is challenging enough. When you introduce family dynamics, you're upping the risk and the complexity of your business in many ways. I've seen really good families ripped apart due to unsuccessful businesses and because of greed in successful businesses. And so there are 2 things that I would suggest you steer clear of if you want to get into business. One is a family business, and 2 is partners. Partnerships are really hard. If you have to have a partner or you want to have a partner, make sure that one of you has a 51% controlling decision. You're setting yourself up for failure if you think. And young entrepreneurs, and I'm not judging, right? Because you obviously, a lot of talent and all that, but as you get older, you realize that you might be setting yourself up for a bigger challenge and failure if there's not one person in the company that makes the final decision for every decision in the business. And so I would argue against 50-50 partnerships. And if it's your idea, if it's your business, if you can, keep control of it.
Last one, Professor Keller.
Let's go with the student.
We have a class behind us, so we make the best we can of it.
Yeah, that's great.
So like you said, your company's investing in a lot of companies around the Willamette Valley and stuff. And it seems like their entrepreneurial ecosystem's really kicking off within the last several years, and it's looking like it's going to do more in the future.
Oh. Yeah, it's kind of a cool startup scene going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, what do you think Eastern Oregon could do to sort of kickstart that entrepreneurial spirit and get more companies, more bigger companies wanting to start up here, more graduates wanting to stay in the area instead of go to the city? Do you have any ideas on that?
I guess I haven't thought about that, but I think that in communities like this, small communities in rural Oregon, it takes private-public joint ventures. So it takes public investment as well as private. That is a tough one, and if it was easy, it'd be we would have it solved. I mean, I came here last night. I was reminded today and last night of how beautiful this place is and how wonderful of a place it is to live. But how do you get the economic flywheel going? And it takes it takes a few. So for example, I heard a story last night that this community was being considered for a Cabela's regional store. Would have been a huge boom to the economy. But the land use laws they needed 50 acres. And because of land use laws here, they couldn't find the 50 acres. And so when I talk about private-public joint venturing, you know, everybody, including local government, has got to be of the same mind that starting the economic flywheel is more important than maybe some of the traditional values of land use laws. I'm not saying you should build a nuclear power plant out here, but look, if you know that the economy has taken its toll on the youth and the future and you know in the community, sometimes you got to give a little bit. Sometimes you got to come to the middle, and that was just a lost opportunity that should not have been lost. But I would say keep Eastern Oregon University going, you know, with business programs, have, you know, excellent entrepreneurship programs. Encourage anybody that has an idea that wants to get started to come to the Valley, call the venture capitalists and raise money. We're not hearing. I can't tell you, I don't think we've been approached more than once or twice by anybody in rural Oregon. And if we were, and if it was a good idea, we'd be as interested, if not more interested, in investing in folks in rural Oregon for a lot of reasons. Labor, anyway. It's, you know, sometimes it just takes a little success to start, you know, building on that. But I don't know what the competitive advantages are here. I don't know what the price of power is. I don't know what the land use laws are. I don't know, you know, where Eastern Oregon is specializing in their education programs. I don't know, but I'm sorry that I don't have a better answer.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No, you helped out.
All right.
Well, no, it's actually a great answer, and it's something that we're working on here as a university to try and help change that.
Great.
Did you have a final question? Yes, sir.
Well, it's nice to meet you folks. Good luck in life and all of your ventures. Thanks for having me.